Karina stood in the great hall, her hands tied with silk, her armor replaced by gold ribbons. The alien nobles around her laughed quietly, covering their mouths with long fingers. To them, she was a Joka fake gift, a tool for humiliation. The Grand Chancellor of the Zelthari Empire stepped forward. Smiling cruelly, "Let this warrior bride be our gift to the human diplomat," he said, his voice full of poison. "They say humans love taking what they don't understand. Let's see how he handles her." Karina didn't move. Didn't speak. She knew what this was. She had trained her whole life to fight, to earn respect in battle. Instead, they gave her away like property to a human and enemy. The doors opened with a soft hum, and the human walked in, tall, calm, dressed in a black uniform with silver stripes. His name was Eric Thorne, a peacekeeper, a diplomat now, her owner. He looked around the room with sharp eyes, noticing the smirks, the fake bows. Then his gaze met hers. And for a second, something shifted. He didn't smile, didn't laugh. He looked at her like a person, not an object. "Is this serious?" Eric asked, turning to the Chancellor. "She is your gift." The Chancellor nodded. "Yes, she will warm your bed and clean your floors. Maybe bite you once or twice." Laughter echoed again, low and cruel. Karina's jaw tightened, her hand still tied, her heart burning with rage. But then Eric did something strange. He walked over slowly, careful not to alarm her. He didn't touch her chains. He looked into her eyes and said softly, "Do you want to come with me?" Karina blinked, surprised. She had expected orders, or mocking, maybe worse. Instead, he asked her like she had a choice. She nodded once, sharp and proud. He nodded back, turned to the crowd, and said one word, "Accepted." The nobles clapped mockingly as the two walked out, but none of them saw the fire rising in Karina's eyes. None of them saw the small smile that touched Eric's lips when they left the hall. His ship was cold and silent, nothing like the Golden Palace. Karina sat on a bench, watching him move through the room. He brought her food, real food, not the dry ration packs she expected. He handed her a warm blanket, then stepped back. "You can sleep here tonight," he said. "No chains, no orders." She stared at him, not trusting this peace. "Why are you being kind?" she asked in her low voice. "I am your prize, am I not?" Eric sat down across from her, leaning back. "You're not a prize. You're a person," he replied. "They tried to insult me, but I don't play their games." Karina didn't know how to answer. No one had ever said those words to her. Not even her own people. "I don't trust humans," she whispered. Eric nodded. "Good. That's smart. Trust takes time, and I'm in no rush." That night, Karina didn't sleep. She sat by the small window, staring into the stars. Her heart was confused, her mind full of questions. Was this some trick? Why was this human acting so calm? What did he really want from her? In the morning, Eric cooked. The smell of real food filled the air. Karina sat across from him, still watching, still silent. "I know you're angry," he said while placing a plate in front of her. "I would be too." Karina picked up the fork slowly. Tasting the food, it was good to good. No poison, no drugs, just food. "I was trained to kill your kind," she said plainly. Eric didn't flinch, "and I was trained to avoid being killed," he replied with a smile. For the first time, Karina almost laughed, but she caught herself, looking away. That evening, she explored the ship. No locked doors, no guards following her. Everything open, everything quiet. In one room, she found weapons, his training gear. Swords, knives, a wooden staff. She touched them gently, testing their balance. "You can train if you like," Eric said from behind her. Karina turned, alert. "You're not afraid? I'll use them on you." "If you do," Eric said, "I'll try not to die too quickly." This time, she did laugh a short, rough sound she hadn't made in years. Later that night, she sat in her room, staring at her hands. They had once been stained with blood. Now they held bread, blankets, and peace. This wasn't how the story was supposed to go. She was supposed to be humiliated, broken, but something unexpected had happened. The human didn't try to own her. He tried to understand her, and that was dangerous in a different way, as the stars drifted by outside the window. Karina whispered to herself, "I don't understand him, but I want to." Asterisk. Karina opened her eyes to silence. No shouting, no guards, no orders barked at her. Just the soft hum of the ship and the smell of something warm in the air. She sat up quickly, her hand reaching for a weapon that wasn't. Their old habits didn't die easy, especially not for a warrior like her. But nothing attacked her. No cuffs, no collars. Only a folded robe and fresh water placed beside the bed. It felt like a trap. Kindness always came with pain later. At least, that's what her people taught her. She got dressed, alert and silent. Every step down the hall was careful, her senses sharp. But then she heard something unexpected: music, soft and slow. It wasn't alien, it was human. Eric was sitting at a small table, eating and typing on a datapad. When he saw her, he smiled. Not too big, not too fake. "Morning," he said casually. "Hope you slept well." Karina didn't answer. She just stood there, arms crossed, ready for the game to begin. "You hungry?" he asked, getting up and walking to a small machine. He tapped a few buttons, and within seconds, steam rose from 2 plates. He placed one in front of her without speaking further. Eggs, bread, and something sweet. Real food again. Karina looked at him with suspicion. "You're feeding me again?" she said. "Why?" He raised an eyebrow. "Because it's breakfast." That answer made no sense. No one gave food without wanting something. Her voice sharpened. "You're trying to make me trust you." "I'm trying to not be an ass," Eric replied, calm. As ever, if trust comes later, fine. If not, that's also fine. Karina didn't like this. It was too soft, too strange. She sat down slowly and ate in silence, watching every move he made, but the food was real. The silence was peaceful. And the humans still didn't try to touch her, order her, or insult her. After breakfast, she followed him. Through the ship, no one stopped her. He showed her the medbay, the weapons locker, and even the command center. "Why show me everything?" she asked finally. "I could take over this ship." Eric gave a half smile. "I'd like to see you try. But really," he continued, "you're a guest, not a prisoner." That word hit her hard. Guest. No one had ever called her that. Before, she had been a warrior, a tool, a joke, but never a guest. He handed her a small device. "This controls your door, food settings, music, whatever you want." Karina took it carefully, as if it might explode. "You still think?" "I won't stab you in your sleep," she asked. Eric looked her dead in the eyes. "I think you could have done that already. But you didn't." That night, Karina stood alone in the training room. She didn't ask for permission. She didn't need to. She picked up a wooden practice blade and began to move. Her strikes were fast, sharp, deadly. Every swing cut the air with years of pain and discipline, but something was missing. She wasn't angry anymore, not like before. She heard footsteps behind her. Eric entered, holding a staff of his own. "Mind a spar?" he asked. Karina smirked. "You want to lose?" They circled, weapons up, eyes locked. The first strike came fast, hers. He blocked it, barely. The second, his missed by inches. The dance began, fast, clean, focused. No words, just motion and breath. It lasted 10 minutes before she finally knocked the staff from his hands. He laughed, raising both arms in defeat. "Okay, you win." Karina didn't laugh, but her eyes sparkled for the first time in days. They sat on the mat afterward, breathing heavy, sweat on their foreheads, calm in their chests. "You're not what I expected," she admitted. "Same." Eric replied, "You didn't kill me, so that's a win." She looked at him, seriously now. "You really don't want anything from me?" Eric's answer came without delay. "I just want to understand. Understand you, your people, your pain." Karina didn't know what to say to that, so she stood up, turned, and left the room without a word. Later, alone in her room, she stared at the control device. She tapped it once. Music filled the air. Human music, soft again, slow again. Her fingers moved over the soft blanket. Her heart beat slower than usual. She didn't like this feeling. This comfort, it was dangerous, but even more dangerous, she didn't want it to end. As the music played and the stars drifted by outside, Karina lay back on the bed and whispered, "This human. He's going to break me in ways I never imagined." Karina's blade stopped just an inch from Eric's throat. Her breath was heavy, her arms tense, but Eric didn't flinch, didn't move. He just stared at her with calm eyes, waiting. She could end it now. She had the skill, the speed, the strength, but her hand wouldn't move. Not to kill, not anymore. She dropped the training sword and it clattered on the floor. Eric exhaled slowly and nodded. "You held back," he said. "You're not the same Karina from the palace." She didn't answer. She didn't know how to. They trained every morning now, blades and staffs, fists and footwork. They didn't speak much during the fights, but something unspoken grew between the strikes. A rhythm, a bond, a quiet trust neither wanted to admit. One night, after a long spar, they sat side by side near the viewing window. The stars stretched forever, cold and distant. Eric handed her a cup of warm tea. Karina sipped slowly, her fingers brushing his. It was the first time she didn't pull away. "I used to think all humans were weak," she said quietly. "You don't act like the ones I fought in the war. I used to think all aliens hated us." Eric replied, "I guess we're both wrong." Karina leaned back, her eyes following the stars. "My mother died in that war," she said, her voice flat but heavy. Human ship bombed her outpost. They said it was a mistake. Eric didn't speak. He just nodded slowly, taking the weight of her words without excuse. "My brother wanted revenge," she added. "He joined the front lines, disappeared 3 months later." "I lost people too," Eric said softly. "My sister, my best friend, my whole squad." Once I stopped counting after a while. The silence between them grew warmer, not colder. Two broken warriors, once enemies, now sharing wounds in the dark. "I trained to kill you," she whispered. "But now, I don't know what I am anymore." "You're free," Eric said gently. "That's more than most." The next day, a message arrived, encrypted, urgent. Eric read it with a serious face, then looked at her. "I have to go," he said. "There's trouble in the nearest system." Karina stood straight. "I'm coming with you. It's dangerous." Eric warned. "I'm not asking," she said firmly. "You're not the only one who can fight." He smiled slightly, knowing he couldn't win that argument, and deep down, he didn't want to go without her. They suited up combat gear, weapons, field packs. Karina looked at herself in the mirror. No gold ribbons, no silk chains. Just armor, real and solid. Beside her, Eric checked his gear. He looked different now too. Not just a diplomat, he was a fighter again, and she trusted him with her life. The mission was simple. On paper, stop a rogue trader from selling advanced weapons to pirates. But in reality, nothing was simple. The nearest outpost was already burning when they arrived. Black smoke rose into the stars, and red alarms flashed across the landing bay. "We're late," Karina muttered, her eyes scanning the chaos. "Not too late," Eric replied, pulling his weapon. They moved fast, silent, efficient. Kirina took down 2 pirates in seconds. Blades flashing like silver lightning, Eric covered her with perfect aim. No wasted shots, no hesitation. Together, they were unstoppable. For a moment, she felt alive again, not a joke, not a slave, but a warrior. But then, a blast came from the upper deck. Kirina saw it too late. It hit her in the side, and pain exploded through her body. She collapsed behind cover, gasping. Eric ran to her, ignoring fire, ignoring danger. He dropped to his knees, grabbing her arm. "Stay with me," he said. "Don't you dare pass out." Her lips trembled. "It's not bad," she lied, blood on her side. "Liar," he whispered. Lifting her carefully, he carried her out of the fire. Shielding her body with his own, they barely made it back to the ship, the doors sealed behind them as he laid her down in the medbay. Machines whirred to life, healing foam hissing over her wounds. Kirina watched him through blurry eyes. "You came back for me," she said, surprised. "Of course I did," he said, holding her hand. "You're not just a warrior to me." Those words hit deeper than the wound, and in that moment, Kirina realized something terrifying. Her heart had shifted. She didn't just respect him, she needed him. Not for war, not for survival, but for something far more dangerous. Something she never thought she'd feel again. Connection. Later, when the pain faded and she could sit up, Eric brought her tea again. He sat beside her, his shoulder touching hers. They didn't speak, they didn't need to. Her fingers reached out, slowly, and wrapped around his hand. He didn't. "Pull away," Kirina whispered, almost to herself. "I think you've stolen something from me." "What's that?" Eric asked gently. She looked at him, eyes soft. "My heart, **. Kirina's wound had healed. But something deeper inside her still burned, not from the plasma blast. Not from pain, but from what she felt when Eric held her hand. She had been trained to resist pain, fear, and weakness, but no one trained her to resist kindness. Now she stood in the warbay, armor on, weapon ready. Eric stood across from her, checking his gear. They were heading into enemy territory again this time. "By choice, you sure about this?" he asked, tightening his gloves. She nodded without hesitation. "I go where you go." His eyes softened for a moment, but then the ship shook slightly. Auto jump initiated. They were locked in now. Destination: Argo Station, orbiting a dying star. Intel said smugglers were gathering there, testing an ancient energy core that could burn a planet clean. Eric tapped the console, stealth mode on. Kirina checked her pulse cannon, then looked at him. "What's the plan?" "We get in," he said. "We take the core offline before it overloads, and if they stop us." He smirked. "Then we show them what happens when a human and an alien work together." They dropped in through the station's service tunnels. It was dark, hot, and smelled like oil and rust. Kirina moved like a shadow, Eric close behind. No alarms, no lights yet. As they reached the inner chamber, they saw it. The core pulsed like a living heart, glowing red with unstable power. Guards stood around it, mercs, pirates, and 2 cloaked engineers. Eric raised his hand, signaling. "Stop." Kirina crouched behind a crate, eyes scanning for patterns. 3 guards moved in a loop. The 4th stayed near the controls. "I'll take the left," she whispered. "I'll cover," he replied. The fight began with silence. Her blade flashed once, one down. Eric's silencer clicked twice. Then the alarm blared. 1 guard hit the panic button, and chaos exploded. Shots fired. Sparks flew. Kirina rolled behind a support beam. Eric grabbed a shield drone from his belt, and through its blue light spread. "Covering them both, we've got 2 minutes before this thing cooks the whole station," Eric shouted. Kirina nodded. "Then let's end this fast." She leaped into the air, landing hard beside the control console. 1 merc charged her. She ducked and kicked him into a wall. Another aimed at her back, but Eric shot him mid-step, cores unstable. She yelled, trying to shut it down, but the alien tech was old, mixed with human parts. And the controls were locked. Eric ran to her side, eyes scanning the panel. "This is no regular core," he muttered. "This is pre-alliance. Can we shut it down?" She asked, voice tense. "Yes, but only from the inside," he said, pulling open a side hatch. The interior shimmered with heat and static. Going in meant radiation and possible death. "I'll do it," Karina said. Stepping forward, "No," Eric said firmly, grabbing her arm. "You're not dying today. Why not me?" She challenged. "Because I need you alive," he said, his voice quiet but strong. Not just for the mission. They locked eyes. In that moment, the noise around them faded. Only the sound of their hearts remained. "Then, we do it together," she said. Eric hesitated, then nodded once. They both entered the chamber, side by side. Sweat dripping from their brows, Eric rerouted the power cables. Karina bypassed the charge coils. The core shook violently. Energy surging through the metal floor. "Almost there," Eric said, fingers flying across the screen. Karina held the bypass cable with one hand and Eric's wrist with the other. "If we die, I want to die with you," she whispered. "We're not dying." He whispered back, "Not today," with one final press. The core went dark. The red glow faded to gray. The station fell silent. Backup lights flickered on, and the alarm shut off. They had done it, together, back on the ship. They collapsed in the medbay, exhausted but alive. Their suits were cracked, skin bruised. But their eyes were bright. Eric looked at her and said, "That was insane." Karina smiled. "You love insane?" He took her hand again, gently. "Thank you for trusting me." "I didn't," she said with a smirk. "I trusted myself." To save your life, they both laughed shrill laughter, the kind that came from the heart. Then silence returned, soft and full of meaning. Eric brushed a strand of hair from her face. Karina didn't move away in the glow of the recovery lights. He leaned in, their lips met, slow and unsure at first, then deeper. It wasn't wild or passionate, was something stronger, real. Later that night, Karina stood at the window again. Stars moved quietly beyond the glass, but now she didn't feel alone. Something had changed. Not just in her body, but in her soul. The warrior had found more than a fight. She had found a reason to keep living. And that reason was sleeping one room away, breathing softly, dreaming with a smile. She placed her hand on her stomach, and for the first time in her life, Karina felt afraid. Not of war, but of what came next. Karina stood alone on the balcony of the ship, her hand resting gently on her stomach. The stars looked peaceful, quiet, unaware of what was coming. She had spent her whole life in armor, trained to obey, trained to kill. But now, something new lived inside her, something small and powerful. A child, half human, half Selthari, a symbol of everything the Empire hated. Inside the ship, Eric paced the command deck, his face tight with concern. They had been hiding for 2 weeks now, moving between empty systems and abandoned stations, but the message had come. A coded warning from an old ally: the Empire is hunting her. Karina entered the room, and Eric looked up at once. "They know," he said simply. She nodded. "Let them come." "No." Eric replied, "They're not coming to talk. They're coming to erase you." Karina sat beside him, calm but alert. "They sent me away to mock you," she said. "Now I carry your child. They'll call it betrayal. They'll call it war." Eric leaned forward, his voice low. "Then we make sure they remember it as a beginning." 3 days later, they were found. A massive cruiser dropped out of warp near a red dwarf star, blocking all paths of escape. Its weapons hummed with deadly energy, its dark hull bearing the seal of the High Council. A voice echoed through. There comes, cold and full of authority. This is the warship judgment. Surrender the traitor Karina or face destruction. Eric stepped forward, voice calm and sharp. This is Commander Eric Thorne of the Terran Alliance. There will be no surrender. Karina placed her hand on his shoulder, her voice. Steady, I'll go, she said quietly. Eric turned to her, shocked. No, you won't. If I go? They might spare you, she argued. If you go, they'll kill you and erase the child. He shot back. I won't let that happen. The screen lit up again, this time with a face cold. Gray-skinned and cruel, it was General Solkar. It's one of the highest commanders in the Empire. He looked at Karina with disgust. You shame our people, he hissed. A warrior turned pet, now pregnant with a mongrel. Karina stood. Tall, unshaken, I chose him, she said, and I choose this child. You have 1 hour, Solkar said. Surrender or burn. The hour passed like thunder. Eric activated the defense grid. Loading every missile and turret, the ship was smaller. Older, but he wasn't backing down. Karina entered the weapons bay. Strapping into armor for the first time since her injury, Eric stared at her, heart pounding. You sure you can fight? No, she said with a small smile. But I'll fight anyway. As the judgment charged its main cannon, Eric sent out a final message. This child is not a threat. He said, it is a bridge. If you destroy us, you destroy your own future. The response came fast and brutal. No half-blood will stain our bloodlines. Then came fire. The first blast rocked their ship. Tearing through the outer hull, Karina fired back, targeting their engines. Eric moved between consoles, rerouting power to shields, the smaller. Ship danced through space, dodging beams and returning fire, but they were outgunned. Another hit slammed the ship, throwing Karina against a wall. Eric pulled her up, holding her close. We can't win this, she said, blood on her lip. Not with guns, he replied. But maybe with truth. He opened the emergency beacon and began broadcasting their private logs. Video of their mission, their survival, their love, and, finally, a scan of Karina's body showing the heartbeat of the child. This is what they want to kill, Eric said into the signal. A life that proves peace is possible. Across the stars, the signal spread to border worlds, neutral zones. Even hidden revel systems, people watched, listened, and began to question. But on the judgment, Solkar only grew angrier. End this, he ordered. Fire everything. Karina gritted her teeth, pulling Eric into an escape pod. Will? Eject head to the ice moon, she said. We'll survive again, but they'll chase us. He replied, let them, she said. Let them see we won't run from love. The pod launched seconds before the ship exploded. Eric's ship burned behind them, but the signal kept streaming. They landed hard on the frozen surface of the moon, wounded, cold, but alive. Eric built a shelter using the pod's parts. Karina lay inside, her body weak, but her spirit unbroken. He held her hand, watching the skies. She whispered through chapped lips, they'll come for us again. He kissed her forehead. Then let them. We'll be ready. Because now. It wasn't just about survival. It was about the child. About proving that love could rise from war, and that a joke bride and a forgotten human could create something the galaxy feared most. Hope. Asterisk snow fell gently on the ice moon. Each flake whispered across the wind, like ghosts from another life. Karina sat inside the small shelter Eric had built, wrapped in a thermal cloak. Her body weak but healing. Her hand rested on her stomach. Now fuller, now real, a child. Growing stronger every day, outside, Eric kept watch with tired eyes. Every sound in the distance made his fingers tighten on his weapon. They had survived the Empire's fire. But for how long? Supplies were low, the cold was cruel, and the beacon had gone silent days ago. Still, he kept scanning the skies. He wasn't watching for enemies. He was watching for hope. Then, one night, it came. A flicker in the sky. A ship not Empire. Not a lion, something else. Sleek, dark, and fast. It landed with no weapons drawn. No shields raised. Eric helped Karina stand as the hatch opened. From the ramp stepped a figure in red armor. Her face half hidden behind a cracked visor. Karina. The woman said, her voice cold. "You're alive." Karina blinked. Zalari. It was her old training partner. Once a rival, now a stranger. Zalari stepped forward slowly, looking between Karina and Eric. "And I see the rumors are true," she said. "You carry his child." Karina stood tall, despite her pain. "Yes, and I will protect it with my life." Zalari nodded. No smile, no anger, just understanding. "I didn't come to fight," she said. "I came because the signal reached places even the Empire can't block anymore." Eric stepped forward, careful but curious. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Zalari answered. "There are those within the Empire who are questioning everything, the footage you sent. It changed minds. Some see you as traitors," she added. "But some see you as something more." Karina looked at her with sharp eyes. "Then take me back," she said. "To them, I won't hide anymore." The flight back to Zelthari's space was tense. Zalari flew in silence while Karina rested and Eric checked her vitals when they finally reached the capital. The city of Therax. Dark clouds filled the sky. They landed in secret, not at the main gates, but through old smuggler paths. Karina walked through the halls of her homeworld, not as a servant, not as a joke, but as a storm. The council was waiting. Tall figures in glowing robes, eyes cold. The Grand Chancellor stood among them, the same one who had once handed her to Eric like an object. "You return here after betraying your blood," he said sharply, "with a human child in your womb. I return not for you," Karina said clearly, "but for those who still have a soul." The room buzzed with whispers, half outrage, half wonder. Eric stood beside her, silent, steady. His presence alone was a challenge to their system. Karina stepped forward, placing her hand on her belly. "This child is mine," she said, "and his." "It is not a curse," she continued. "It is a beginning." The Chancellor sneered. "You dare to speak of unity. You are a weapon, a tool, nothing more." "I was," she said, her voice like ice. "Until your joke backfired." She reached into her cloak and placed a small device on the table. It projected the same footage they had once broadcast. Their missions, their survival, and the first sound of their unborn child's heartbeat. Gasps filled the chamber. Some counselors turned away. Others leaned in closer. "This is what you fear," Karina demanded, "a child that proves peace is possible, a future not built on blood, but on choice." A long silence followed. Then a voice spoke from the far end, soft, old, but respected. It was Counselor Viren, one of the few elders still alive from the First War. "I've lived long enough to see us make the same mistakes again and again." He said, "This child may be the one thing we never tried hope." The Chancellor snapped. "You were blinded by emotion." But more voices began to rise, challenging him, questioning him. The chamber shook not from war, but from change. After hours of debate, the council split. Some still called Karina a disgrace, but others more than expected offered support. They didn't vote that day, but the message was clear. She had shaken the Empire, not with a weapon, but with truth, that night. Karina and Eric stood on a balcony overlooking the capital. Fires burned in the distance. Protests and arguments filled the streets. But for once, the fire was not. To destroy it was to rebuild. I didn't expect this, Eric said, his hand in hers. Neither did I, Karina whispered. But I'm not afraid anymore. The stars above looked the same. But everything below had changed, not because she returned with an army, but because she returned with a child, and the Empire had no idea what to do with that kind of power. The doors of the grand hall opened with a deep echo. Karina walked in slowly, her back straight, her steps silent but firm. She wore no armor, no weapons, only a flowing black robe that made her look both royal and dangerous, but all eyes were on the small bundle she carried in her arms. The baby moved slightly, wrapped in soft cloth. Unaware of the thousands watching from every corner of the Empire's capital, half human, half self-hairy, and completely forbidden, Eric walked beside her, dressed not as a warrior, but as a father. His eyes calm, his hands open. He was not here to fight. He was here to show them something they had never seen. A family, the council chamber, once filled with judgment, now buzzed with silence. Nobles, soldiers, elders, all of them staring. They had expected chaos, a speech, a rebellion maybe. But they never expected this. The Grand Chancellor stepped forward, his face tight. "Why have you returned again?" He said coldly, "We made no ruling, and yet you stand here as if you've already won." Karina lifted her head. "I haven't come to win," she said. "I've come to show you what your fear tried to destroy." She uncovered the child's face. A soft gasp spread across the room. The baby had Zelthari's skin-pale silver but human eyes, blue and bright like a sky after rain. "You wanted to erase this," Karina said, "but now it breathes, it sees, and one day it will speak." The Chancellor narrowed his eyes. "This child is an abomination." Eric stepped forward. "No," he said, voice steady. "This child is the proof that peace can grow from war." A few counselors looked away, ashamed. Others leaned in, curious. Even the guards at the edges of the room seemed unsure. "This isn't just about a baby," Karina continued. "This is about your lies. You told us that humans were animals, monsters. But the man who showed me kindness was human." She looked directly at the Chancellor. "You sent me to humiliate him, but he gave me freedom." She stepped forward, each word like a blade. "You made me a joke, but I returned with something none of you have. Love." Gasps rose again. But this time, no one laughed. Because the child moved just a little, reaching out with a tiny hand, as if even he felt the weight of his mother's words. Counselor Vieren stood slowly, his old voice carrying like thunder. "Let us no longer fear what we do not understand," he said. "This child is not our enemy. He is our test." A murmur spread through the crowd. Some shouted in agreement. Others shook their heads, but the silence that followed was the strongest sound of all. Finally, a new voice echoed through the chamber. It came from the back, from a group of young officers in armor. "If the Empire cannot make room for this future," one said, "then maybe the Empire must change." And just like that, the room cracked, not with violence, but with choice. In the days that followed, the news spread like fire. A child had been born. A warrior had returned. A human had stood beside her, and the people, both human and Zelthari, began to wonder, could there be another path? Could the cycle of hate finally break? Protests filled the cities, but so did festivals. The streets were painted with signs that read, "New blood." New future children played, wearing masks of both human and Zelthari heroes, and for the first time in living memory, both species looked up at the same sky with hope. Karina sat on a hill far from the city, the baby asleep in her arms. Eric lay beside her, eyes closed. "Listening to the wind, you know," he whispered. "They're still afraid." Karina smiled. "Let them be. Fear is how change begins." He turned to look at her. "And what about us?" he asked. "Are we ready for what comes next?" She kissed the baby's forehead. Then Eric's cheek. "I was never ready for you," she said softly. But here we are. Months later, Karina was invited back into the grand hall, not as a joke, but as a speaker. The seats were packed. Not just with nobles, but with citizens, soldiers, even children. And when she stepped onto the platform with her son in her arms, the chamber stood in silence. Not fear, not hate, but respect. She spoke with a calm heart. "My name is Karina," she said. "I was once given away as a joke. But today, I return with purpose." She raised the child for all to see. "And imagine your faces," she said with a small smirk, "when you realize the future belongs to him."